I woke up this morning still pinching myself about the fact that we have a live-action version of Unicron in the pipeline. I will never forget the first time I saw the 1986 movie, just being in awe of the mind-bending scale and ferocity of this guy. The awe was only exacerbated by the fact that he just kind of showed up one day, drifting silently between those two binary stars. Who can forget that? It made him so mysterious. But over the years, there have been a few origin stories for this guy, and in this vid, I'm going to go over them all. I'm going to go over Primus, I'm going to go over Primacron, I'm going to talk about how Shockwave is ultimately responsible for his creation. I'm going to talk about the time this guy ate a black hole. So please take a second to hit like on the video, get subscribed, and let's start with the chipmunk Ewok. Little hairy guy.
You are creator?
Unfortunately, yes.
Of course, I'm talking about Primacron, a hyper-intelligent scientist who showed up in Season 3 of Gen 1, in an episode called Call of the Primitives, when an energy being called Tornadron, which was able to take any form it chose, including this giant spider which would kill planets by sort of kind of sitting on them. Tornadron could split into different parts and suck all manner of energy from anything in the known galaxy. Following the breadcrumbs, the Autobots find an ancient being working in an ancient lab, just hanging out and creating all these different ways to take over the universe, I guess. He'd been alive since the beginning of the universe, eventually building Unicron, who then rebelled against him. That didn't deter him though, as he tried again, and you know the saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, and it's gonna turn into a bunch of mad dragons and shit. Because Tornadron did exactly what Unicron did, only this time mind-controlling the Predacons, Terracons, and the Dinobots, as well as Skylynx and Trypticon. Now, why they decided to make one of the most ancient and smartest beings in the universe look like an Ewok, I have no idea. I guess it was pretty humorous, as everyone would be expecting the creator of this to be pretty fearsome and like some dark satanic-like figure, maybe, I don't know. So maybe they were just running counter to expectation. What happened to him after Grimlock saved the day and destroyed his lab, defeating Tornadron by, with all his genius intellect?
Of course, the reverse switch! Why didn't I think of that?
Well, G1 is G1, isn't it? And it's never really followed up on. The Japanese Gen 1 continuity did though, in which he started out as Primus's pet. In this continuity, Primus was the protector of the universe, and obviously an animal lover. He'd protect the universe from all threats, including one called the Spectres, in what's known as the Time Before, an era of time before all that we know, before the universe came to be, basically. Over the eons, Primacron gained great wisdom by watching his master, and created an extremely powerful energy called Angleboy energy to help battle these Spectres. But this freaked Primus out as being too dangerous, and he peered into the future and saw the evil deeds that Primacron would eventually commit. So Primacron attacked Primus with his minions before escaping to continue his work, first creating not Unicron, but Neo Primus, which was a planet-sized Angleboy energy collecting device. His plan failed, forcing him to wait for the next world, the universe that we know, where he imprisoned Primus's essence in the vessel that would later come to be known as the Matrix of Leadership, and he would use Primus's mysterious energy to bring to life his monstrous creations, including Unicron. After the whole Tornadron event, he was captured and put on trial for crimes against the universe. He argued that Unicron was the prototype for all mechanical life in the universe, so his creation couldn't be a crime. But he was sent to the prison planet Doruka 3 for his own safety, where the Quintessons tried to harvest his brain, but you know what, that's another story. Just briefly, it ended with the Autobots sending him to another universe. This story ended really nicely though, with Wheeljack asking him if he had invented Cybertronian souls. To which he answered that even if you know how to create fire, you didn't necessarily invent it, you just brought into being something that was already there. This conversation apparently led to Wheeljack researching and eventually discovering sparks. Anyway, an origin that started in the Marvel comics tells of how before the beginning of time, there was an extra-dimensional entity known as the One, or as it's sometimes referred to, the Source, and within it the forces of order and chaos kind of coexisted in harmony. The One created an astral being and named it Unicron, and then split him in two to create his brother Primus. Now both were multiversal singularities, the difference being that Unicron could only exist in one dimension at a time, and travel between them as he pleased. Primus existed in all realities at the same time. Their purpose was to explore this young, fledgling universe in front of them, and as they did, Primus quickly saw his brother's sinister nature, and the two fought, Unicron quite easily beating his brother. But Primus was smarter, using his multiversal abilities to zap them to another universe and remanifesting inside the bodies of these two metallic planetoids, which left them both trapped. Primus essentially sacrificed himself. Over time, Unicron became able to transform into what we know, while Primus slowly developed into a world that would come to be known as Cybertron, where he eventually created the 13 Primes, one of whom became the Fallen, and you know the story from there. There have been a few different versions of this origin story over the years, some including the Allspark, some including Star Sabers, some including light gods and dark gods, but it's essentially the same bare-bones story, and it's come to be the most widely accepted origin story. In Armada, he spent over 1 million years disguised as Cybertron's moon. And in The Last Night, he was dormant within the Earth itself, and essentially was its core as somehow the planet formed around his inert body. In the book The Covenant of Primus, there was a similar story with the two beginning their lives in a single omnipotent being, until they were split and Unicron went on the rampage with the goal of smothering and consuming all of reality. The two battled in stalemate until Primus created the 13 to fight in his place, and eventually Optimus was able to break into his body and expose his Primus-like spark to Unicron's spark, which weakened him enough that Vector Prime could create a time loop around him, which effectively put him in stasis indefinitely. And then in Transformers Prime, it's explained how matter gravitated toward his giant slumbering form, and over the millennia formed a planet that found orbit around our star. In Shattered Glass, Nexus Prime initiated an event called the Shroud, which altered the fabric of space-time and split Unicron into different, non-singular versions of himself, which were then scattered through the multiverse. The tiny sliver of him that was good ended up in the mirror universe where all the Autobots are evil and the Decepticons are good. So in this one, he's a good guy who reformats the evil Optimus Prime and a few others, turning them from their evil selves to being good guys. And then he sends them to fight the evil Rodimus. He's even talking about his evil facial hair here. And the even more evil Primus. Yeah, it's a bit of a headfuck, this one. What does good Primus do with his time? You just sort of float around the galaxy, helping people in need. Then we have the IDW continuity, when he was created when Shockwave went back in time, disguised himself as key figure in Cybertronian history Onyx Prime, and encouraged the Cybertronians to go on a brutal expansion. This meant the devastation of countless worlds, including Antillan, whose people were nearly wiped out altogether. But one Antillan, driven by the loss of his family, created the ultimate doomsday device called the Talisman, and once its magical power was unleashed, it turned their sun into a black hole, which messed with space and time and reality in all different kinds of ways, and combining with the magical powers of the Talisman, remade the planet Antillan into Unicron. His mind was still tied to the Talisman, which Shockwave, or Onyx Prime, whatever you want to call him, sent to Earth for safekeeping. Unicron slumbered for 12 million years, where he was accidentally reactivated by a wizard called Merklin, who was one of the Visionaries. Take a look at my crossovers vid if you want to know more about them. Basically, he was trying to use the Talisman's energies to restore his planet of Prismos, but inadvertently sent out a huge blast of energy that awoke the slumbering behemoth, who set about completing his mission of destroying, well, everything. His first point of business was to devour the black hole that the Talisman had created, making it his core, harnessing its quantum tunneling properties. That allowed him to draw energy from nearby stars to fuel his devastating attacks, which then snuffed out the stars in the process. Apparently, all the worlds he devoured would be recombined within him, making these strange landscapes within his body and making the inhabitants of those worlds into a sort of immune system that could fight off intruders. Anyway, this guy was only defeated when Optimus threw himself into the black hole, which transported him to infraspace, where he convinced the Antillan to stop the cycle of violence that Shockwave had started all those millennia ago. F***ing Shockwave, man. And then he took him into an embrace, as they both died together. And I love this ending, I've said it before. Unicron's body collapsed into the black hole that had become his core. And the black hole remained in our solar system and was visible from Earth, apparently. So those were his origins, but equally interesting is what happened after he was destroyed, because that severed head got used for some strange stuff too.
And remember, when you're thinking of giant heads, think of the big giant head.
In the Wings universe, the Star Seekers tried to use it to drain all the energy out of Cybertron, and the Tripredacus Council used it as a base in Beast Wars, before later blowing it up with the transmatter bomb. The Vok took the form of his head when talking to Optimus, stating that they wanted a form that conjured fear and respect and all that stuff. In the Marvel UK comics, the head ended up on planet Junkion, where his consciousness was able to mind control the Junkions into building him a new body. Imagine how long that would take. Like, he's bigger than most planets. They would need to use their entire planet for resources. Anyway, Wreck-Gar planted explosives underneath him and blew his head right up. Then back in G1, the ghost of Starscream tracked down the head at one stage and said he would give him a new body if Unicron restored his, because he was a ghost. So Starscream stole transformation cogs from Trypticon and Metroplex so that Unicron could use Cybertron as his new body.
My resurrection is at hand.
As soon as Starscream got his new body from Unicron, though, he was like, see ya!
Do it yourself!
And the Autobots blew Unicron's head into space again.
I am pleased with these eyes.
Wait, he can turn his eyes around so he can see the inside of his own head? Grimlock apparently used components of Unicron's head to create the Technobots, before Technobot Strafe managed to do enough damage to his internals that it deactivated him for good, finally killing the big giant head. And in the Primacron episode, you saw the head floating along completely grayed out, so I guess, yeah, definitely dead. Alright you guys, let's leave that there for now. Next week I'm going to start on most powerful entities in Transformers that aren't Autobots or Decepticons, and that's going to be quite a long one, I think. We've got Dire-Wraiths and Rom in there, we're going to talk about Atlas and Primus, Lockdown will probably be in there, and you know, tons more. I'm also going to carry on with my RC video, and goddamn that girl has been through some shit. I was thinking about ranking the female Transformers in terms of power, but I don't know, it might be quite difficult to do. Anyway, listen, it's 4 fucking AM, so I'm rambling. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch my videos. I know YouTubers say this kind of shit all the time, but all your support really does mean a lot to a shitty little channel like mine. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Cheerio, bye!